Good morning, everyone. Welcome to APU and Industry Career Life webinar session. My name is Colin from Asia Pacific University of Technology and Innovation, and I'm a host for this session. We apologize for the technical issue just now. There's no sound for the video. Today is our first day of the webinars, and this is the first session of the day. We will have more sessions later on and also over the weekend. Our webinar series covers in the field of AI and big data, cybersecurity, engineering, psychology, fintech, actuarial study, digital marketing, entrepreneurship, and many more. While waiting for more people to join our live session today, I would like to invite you all to come and join our APU e-Open Day. Our counselors are ready to guide you through all the pathway available for your further study after your SPM, UEC, or IGCSE. For more information and updates, please visit to our website and also follow our Facebook page. Today, we are proud to have Mr. Faisal from Ministry SR and also Mr. Jacob from APU School of Computing, again with us to tell you more about the future of virtual and augmented reality in the terms of AR, VR, MR, and also SR. So welcome, Mr. Faisal and also Mr. Jacob. Hi,
Morning.
Jacob.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Faisal. Morning. Over to you, Mr. Jacob.
Sure. All right. Good morning, everyone. As introduced, I am Jacob, currently working with Asia Pacific University. And the speaker of our sharing session today is Mr. Faisal. Let me just give you a very brief introduction about himself. So, Mr. Faisal Atal has always been passionate in the extended reality field, or in short, we call it XR. Having graduated in virtual reality back in 2007, his passion for VR led him to pursue a career which allows his creativity to flourish into a future of spatial computing. He has been involving himself on various VR, XR, AR projects, such as the E-Warisan, which brings ancient Malaysian architecture to life, a VR property experience application, and lecturing VR as an assistant lecturer. So currently, he works as a lead XR engineer at Ministry XR, which is one of our industrial partners with APU. So, and he is also supervising VR and MR projects and aiding the XR related projects. So without further delay, I would like to pass the time to Mr. Faisal for this sharing session today. Faisal, I hand it over to you.
Okay. Hello. Welcome everyone to the talk. Can you guys see my screen? Cool. Okay.
Yep, you can.
Okay, so basically, just let me test this out. Just want to make sure that I'm seeing what I'm supposed to see. Okay, cool. Okay, so welcome to the talk. My name is Faisal Adhar. We're going to talk about the future of augmented and virtual reality. So this is basically talking about what you need to know about XR, AR, VR, and MR. So we did this last time, but basically we're going to go over this again with you guys now. So hopefully we're going to have fun and you guys going to learn a bunch of stuff. And so let's get to it. Okay, so today we're going to talk about what is AR, VR, MR, XR. You probably heard about some of these acronyms, so we're just going to go through what are these acronyms all about. Their current trends of XR, what are the XR works in the industry, and what does the future holds for XR. So this might be a really interesting topic for you guys who are really looking forward to what's into these kind of like attacks and whatnot, and trying to figure out like what you guys want to go for after your SPM, or if like you're looking for the further studies or like going into venture on the work, different kind of work. So this is basically the talk for you guys. So, a bit about myself. Basically, my name is Faisal Athar bin Muhammad Fadzil. I am a lead XR engineer. I'm also currently mainly working as a creative technical producer. I'm also an XR masterclass trainer. Basically, I train masterclasses on XR as well. Because I have a certified HRDF trainer. I have two fat cats and a prominent New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW fan as well. And that is me wearing the HoloLens in the XR studio at APU. So hopefully when you guys are available to come by to APU, you can drop down to the XR studio and really have fun with the devices there. There's the HoloLens, there's Oculus Quest, and there's the edX system there. Really fun stuff. Okay, so to begin, basically, what is AR, VR, MR, XR? You probably heard of some of this. You probably kind of like, I think I know, but I'm not exactly sure. But then then you see like, oh, there's a lot of devices out there. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of like different stuff as well. So what's the difference? What's AR? What's VR and whatnot? So basically the main term of it, like the overall umbrella term of it, is XR. So XR, when we talk about XR, it encompasses all three, basically AR, VR, and MR. All of the augmented reality, mixed reality, and virtual reality all falls down under the extended reality form. The term, basically. So it is an umbrella term. So XR by itself does not mean a specific thing, but rather that when we say XR, it can mean one of these three, or it can be a merge of it, like basically like you can switch from one to another. Like people are already like in development of devices that can basically like switch from AR to VR and so forth. So basically that's why we have like they come up with the term called XR. Basically it's basically anything that's extended, an extension of the actual reality, then basically that's falls under XR. So all of this is basically a new medium on how you want to consume information and basically communicate. So we start off with the first thing, basically virtual reality. Virtual reality, I think, is probably like the most straightforward one. Is basically, if you see here, is basically you are in a virtual world. If you've watched Ready Player One, you've watched The Matrix, that's basically the gist of it. So because VR in itself, it is immersing people into a completely virtual environment, and it's a technology by which computer-aided stimuli create the illusion of being somewhere else. So as long as basically you are being transported into a different realm, into a different world, into a different environment, that's the whole point of VR. We're supposed to bring you somewhere. You're supposed to be in a different place where it's different from where your physical space is. It's basically if you're experiencing VR in your bedroom, in your living room, in the class, or any other center or whatnot, we're supposed to transport you to somewhere else. That is basically virtual reality. So it's usually you want to go, sometimes a lot of people go for fantasy worlds, or even like things that are not achievable in real life, such as like past temples, past historical buildings, or even dangerous places like on top of a volcano, or even on the moon, on Mars and whatnot. So imagine basically all of that. You can literally be there in VR. So that's basically the whole point of VR. So how would you experience VR? So there are a few ways, basically, mainly the main ways of experiencing VR is through a virtual reality headset, such as the Oculus Quest or even the HTC Vive, or there's a lot of VR headsets like the Valve Index as well. And these are the main devices if you want to try out VR headsets. To experience VR experiences. There are certain experiences which you can experience through your phone as well, which is like YouTube 360, or even there's a lot basically like 360 experiences, VR experiences, very very minimal casual experiences, which does not require that level of immersiveness, where it's basically like a casual sit down experience where you just look around and experience. So those kind of experience you can go through for mobile VR, such as the Google Cardboard and stuff. And then there's WebVR, something new, which is basically experiencing VR through your web browser. So this can be experienced through any of these devices, or even just the desktop or your mobile. We are basically, it's the fun thing about it, it is basically that it does not require an application per se. You only run through your web browser, so it's something really interesting as well, which is because it gives that ease of access. So you just basically just give them the link, and then they're good to go. They're basically, you don't really have to install anything new and whatnot, so it doesn't take up much of your space, so you don't really have to really worry about that. So this something, it's already coming, it's already here. There are a few experiences that are built within WebVR as well. So moving on, that is under virtual reality. When we talk about augmented reality, what is augmented reality? I think like a lot of us have a lot more experience for augmented reality, because like virtual reality is something that requires a specific hardware and a specific physical space and whatnot, and it's not really as accessible to a lot of people. Whereas augmented reality is something that you can really access it through your phone, and a lot of these experiences are already it's embedded within the particular experience. So augmented reality, basically it creates an overlay of virtual content, but you can't interact with the environment per se, because it's an enhanced version of the physical real world reality, of which elements are superimposed by computer generated or extracted real world sensory input, such as sound, video, graphics, or haptics. So that's basically what Peter Schiffel, from adjunct professor from Institute of Finance, Freiburg School of Management, said way back then. So basically, if you can see here, this is basically a project that we did for Pizza Hut, where we augmented the menu of Pizza Hut. So they wanted people, when we work with Pizza Hut, their main concerns, basically they want people to learn more and to get to know their menus better, basically. So we augment the menu, we added like a small mini game there, so they will go back and forth, they kind of like really find out the things in the menu, so they get to learn more about the menu and learn more about Pizza Hut by all around. Similar comment, so it basically, it augments the thing, that so you're still seeing the physical world, but you got augment information on top of it, by either information via marker or by the internet and whatnot. Everything basically, as long as basically augmenting things on top of the real world itself, that falls under AR. So it covers a lot of range and aspect as well. I'm gonna backtrack a bit to VR, because like, I want to share as well about this particular GIF that I shared. So this particular visual is basically is a VR showroom that we did for Subaru Forester. So we did that, if I'm not mistaken, like 3 years ago, 2018, if I'm not mistaken, 2018. So we showcase their cars, the Subaru Forester and the Subaru XV, within a virtual space. So you get a glimpse of how big it is. You can interact with the doors. You can try it out. So it's really interesting. Well, you can basically bring really interesting contents and products, different fields within a confined, limited amount of space, physical space. So that's basically the magic of VR. So let's come back to AR. We were already here. So I shared about this. So I think like AR, we kind of like distinguish really clearly what VR is and what AR is. And AR, how we experience AR, such as like a lot of people have probably played Pokemon Go or like Minecraft World and whatnot. So these are mostly AR experiences that you can experience through your mobile phones. So a lot of these AR experiences obviously is already in mobile, because it's a lot easier, and a lot nowadays phones has been a lot more powerful than before, so it can handle a lot more content. There are also talks about like AR glasses. Like there are like we know, some of us basically know like how Apple has been saying that they're going to create their own AR glasses. I think Facebook is working on something as well. There are certain already existing in the market, such as like the Google Glass Enterprise Edition 2 and the Vuzix Blade, and there was a few other, but it's not as prominent, but it's more not targeted to the consumer market, but it's more targeted to the industry market, because basically you are augmenting items without holding a device in your hands. so that your hands are free to actually do work. So that is a very useful thing to have in the engineering sector, in the architecture sector, or even in the medical sector, basically. So these why these kind of like experiences are in demand more in the industry. And similar to web VR, web AR is something that it's an experience that you can go through use just your browser that can be accessed through all any of these devices, and then as long as it has AR capabilities, then you can basically run AR. So you don't really need to install anything as well. So it's basically that is that. The downside of web-based applications like this is basically obviously you are highly dependent on the internet, and then because it runs on browser and streaming everything, the content might not be as in has a lot more depth like other like all upper mainly built applications by itself, but it's more something more like a casual, more easier, more simpler way of communicating through AR. And finally, we go to mixed reality. So mixed reality is a bit of a complex one, where basically it takes augmented and virtual combined together. Basically, it combines the augmented aspects of augmented reality with basically augmented virtual content on top of the real world. But now it has a sense of physical understanding. It has sensors to track the surface. It tracks the world around you, and then it can basically park itself on top of the surface, so you can have augmented items behind walls and whatnot. So it is what it's an immersive computer generated environment, which elements of physical and virtual environment are combined. So it's a blend of both digital worlds. So like this particular visual where we see the edX system is an educational experience where we have on the XR studio. So imagine basically you have all of this augmented reality, and then you have all of these students can literally see the same content parked in the same spatial space. So you have this world in front of you, and then everybody can look around, and then you can move around these things, and everything is basically has context to the surface level. So this is basically something really interesting as well. And there's a very few devices that has mixed reality components. Even though since the LiDAR came by, and then it's like a lot of like phones now has like surface level mapping, that is we can consider that as mixed reality as well, but it's not as high end as some of these mixed reality devices are. And to experience MR, you would require a specific mixed reality device, such as the HoloLens and the Nreal. So it has like hand gestures and one, it has voice commands, and there are certain mobile phones basically that has these capabilities as well. So interesting times are in front of us. Basically, we're going to have like more devices, more affordable devices going to be coming soon, so that a lot of us people can actually experience mixed reality in the future. And okay, so that we covered basically a lot of the what is AR, VR, XR. That's basically the main thing. The current trends. So what is like the current trends in XR? There's a lot of trends, basically not limited to the things that I noted over here, but we're just gonna talk about these part. Just basically just like these are the main parts that's like make up the current trends. So LiDAR is basically a short form for light detection and ranging. So this is basically how iPhone uses the phone's detection ranging sensors to basically detect the surface on the floor, on the wall. So you can literally, if you want to have to buy a furniture and whatnot, so imagine you can buy IKEA furniture and literally see the furniture in your living room, and then it detects your living room space. It detects the surface of your floor, the walls and whatnot, and then you can basically move them around. So you have a lot better context of viewing these experiences, and then you can make a lot of decisions a lot clearly and a lot better. So this is basically the whole point of it. So, and then we have gesture recognition. So there's like even like the Oculus Quest as well. They are already having the gesture recognition where you can detect your hands within it, so you don't really need the controller. This is basically mainly similar with a lot of mixed reality devices as well, like such as the HoloLens, because they do not have any external controllers. So you are totally controlling the experience using your hands. So it's a very interesting experience as well. So it does not hinder your the work that you are doing while you're basically like, imagine that you're a surgeon and basically you're still working on your patient. You cannot be bothered to actually hold an external device while you're working on your patient, so it doesn't make sense. This is why mixed reality devices are basically a main goal for them, to basically to have augmented items. You have a con call from a specialist and whatnot, or like extended information regarding the patient while you're working on it, so you don't really have to kind of have all of the information right in their fingers. So this uses computer vision and a lot of like mathematical algorithms for this, as well as voice and speech recognition. So these are basically, I think, like most of our phones will have already these kind of like these functionalities, but there's a lot, takes a lot more further to basically can command certain applications and like program a certain application to do a specific thing just through your voice. So a lot of these devices have incorporated these features as well to basically make things a lot easier, especially with like the example I gave. When you're actually doing stuff with your hands, you want to command the application to do something, or next slide, or call somebody. You don't want to mess up with your hands and whatnot, so you can just basically just use voice control with that. So we talked about this a few times, basically web AR or web VR. So it is you experience AR directly from the browser. So like Spider-Man, like when the movie Into the Spider-Verse came out, so they actually made that where you can experience having Spider-Man in your living room, but and it just uses the browser. So how cool is that? As well as some VR experiences, but to get the maximum value of the VR experience, you would need the VR, a small, like a simple VR headset you can buy at Lazada or like the Google Cardboard and stuff like that, just to get the better glimpse of having VR in itself. Analytics is something really interesting as well, because it tracks. We know that analytics has been done in web development and a lot of software applications. But in VR, basically, it's good to know where the user is actually interacting with and what they're actually looking for. So, as for training and for for understanding the users, basically, you would use these data to improve the applications and then adjust accordingly. Basically, like if he's more keen on looking on to a certain product where you have like a lot of products, but you know from the design of it and from the data you gain that you know that the user are more keen to this particular product, then a lot of people can make use from that data and try to sell more of that particular product, because they know this hard data that they cannot refute. So this is why analytics is really prominent within all the XR realms. And we talk about like who actually uses XR. Basically, there's the industry levels and then there's the consumer level. Us on the side, we work at Ministry XR. We work with both. Basically, we work with some of the business for that business-driven industry partners, and then we work on doing consumer works as well. But which fields are mainly using XR? So we understand that from the industry standpoint, in the business world, majority of it comes from the medical field. So like we mentioned about the surgeons and whatnot, medical fields are mainly in demand for XR solutions, basically, because they need something that can make their lives easier, make things better, make decisions better, and just help them in their work. The next is basically manufacturing and military. So these are other case studies as well that basically in the industry have a lot of use within the XR. So this is not talking about like what's to come. This is basically talking about what has been done. These are all of the industries have been going on in the world. So there's a lot of industries like Volvo, Toyota. They are actually using XR in their work. That is part of their development pipeline. So imagine they are designing the cars in XR and getting the shareholders to view it directly rather than viewing it on a screen, viewing it on a chart, on a presentation, on a video. Imagine you can literally see the car in front of you, so you make decisions a lot better in this way. So that is on the business side. On the consumer side, a lot we know this is generally it's a given because XR is something fun, is something entertaining. So it doesn't make it obviously makes sense that the entertainment sector has been capitalizing on XR, mainly the gaming industry, because when you experience game within the XR realm, it just gives you another level of immersiveness. It just gives you another level of next level of experience. You are totally immersed in it, instead of like watching things, experiencing going through on the screen when you play Assassin's Creed or Mass Effect and whatnot. Imagine if you are inside the world of Mass Effect. You can literally see the ship around you. You can literally see everything going around. So that is next level of experience, and that is something that you cannot do within any other mediums as well. And then also movies and televisions, they are going into this as well. And basically there are other consumer based medical, retail, and tourism as well, but they are not as prominent as gaming and movies and television as well. Not to say that these other fields are not as in demand, but it's not dominating the market, so to say. Okay, so we talked about we saw I mentioned about like the who uses the XR industry and whatnot, and how basically. So now we're gonna go a bit into the depth, like who uses basically in the industry, what's has been going on around us. Well, we think like, oh, just there it's just a game, it's just basically something people are doing in the game, but who actually uses this? So there's a lot of fields. I mentioned it before as well. So I'm going to share with you some, like in the entertainment and gaming sector, from employees and consumers business, in healthcare, real estate, and also marketing, how the industry has been using XR in various ways. So we talk, like I mentioned in the earlier slides, when we talk about XR, it can mean AR, it can mean VR, it can mean MR, it can be anything basically. So it's a shorter way of saying all of that. So we just say XR in terms. So within the entertainment and gaming, that's it's because it's the mainstream exposure of XR. It's a lot easier to get gaming. The gaming community are a lot susceptible for these kind of new experiences. So that's why we have like the Pokemon Go for AR, and people have been like millions of people everywhere around the world have played Pokemon Go, and that's basically the first step of awareness regarding what is AR. And then VR, basically, there's a lot of more, depending on the devices you have, there's a lot of VR experiences out there, such as the Half-Life Alyx, where it really utilizes the Valve Index knuckle controllers, basically using your hands and fingers. And then mixed reality is something, they are incorporating games as well within mixed reality. So in this case, like Angry Birds did. So imagine if you play Angry Birds, but in your living room, so you can see that in 3D, and you can walk around the obstacles, and it really gives you a whole different sense of the whole experience. So it's really interesting as well. So that is on mixed reality and on the entertainment business. For employees and consumers, this is more on job trainings and whatnot. So a lot of like companies, they are employing using AR or XR basically to skill transfer. So just like the experience on the top left there, basically if you use like an AR guide, so it can detect, it can show, it overlays information on top of like an engine. So it basically gives you a better understanding on training on how to change engine per se. Basically, you imagine like how mechanics can be better at experiencing this and basically help a lot faster time to train them basically. So that's basically the whole point of it, as well as virtual onboarding and middle of it. So that is basically a virtual experience of Walmart employees. Basically, they experience virtual reality of a typical day of Black Friday sales. So if we know all about the news and whatnot, we know how hectic it can be during the sales, and it can be overwhelming for new employees. So it's good to have like a virtual onboarding. So you have like a virtual experience prior to the actual real world experience. So that helps people within their work. Finally, down there is basically the virtual collaboration, which is a lot of us actually are trying to do as well. Basically, you have these virtual collaboration applications such as Spatial down there. So you are literally see people to work with without physically having to be in the same physical space. which is something that is on the rise nowadays given the pandemic with all of our travel restrictions. Imagine if you can go to the office in virtual format instead of just watching my face or your face on the video like this. But so to have a virtual presence, like you have like an avatar, you can literally feel like he's there for you and you are there for them. So it just gives a whole different world of basically social interactions in the pandemic world. So this is basically the mainstay for this. We talked about healthcare as well. So this is basically like in the medical sector, how they're using mixed reality devices to augment information on top of their patients. So you get a lot more information, really quicker information. So so the surgeons or the doctors can really decide on the fly and save more lives. And remote calling as well for mixed reality remote calling. So you have like mixed reality conference call, basically window floating in the air inside or the side of you. You can have like multiple calls, and all of it basically you don't have to hold anything. You don't have to hold a window here, a phone here, or another tablet over there. So you have all of this directly in the air. So this is basically when we talk about spatial computing. You have the computers around you. So this is basically what using a mixed reality feels like. And finally, I want to share that basically like during when the pandemic hits, the Holo patient, they actually developed this particular mixed reality experience for doctors to really have a understanding on how to deal with COVID-19 patients. So these are very life-saving as well, not just for the patient, but for the doctors themselves, because they require training, they require taking care of as well, because they are engaging with um, with COVID patients. So they need to understand like information about them, the proper range. We need to understand the information about these patients and how to deal and how to basically administer the correct medicine for them. So this is basically why medicine in the healthcare business, it is something is a really on demand, is really interesting experience for them to just make a lot more decisions and just save more lives. Real estate has been a mainstay as well for VR, especially for VR and AR. But on the top part, imagine like if you want to buy a house, you don't really need to go to physical showroom anymore. You can just experience it in the comfort of your home using XR. Basically, you can imagine you can view the house or the property within a VR world just by itself. So that basically saves a lot more time, and you can basically make decisions a lot better. Like down there, basically what we did in my own company called VR Lab, we did like a VR property sales for Monquera's UEM Sunrise. When they launched this particular property, I can't remember what's the property name anymore, but they launched this property without a physical showroom. They only relied on the virtual reality showroom. So a lot of the customers, they can actually experience a lot of really cool, interesting stuff within the virtual house. So they can already make a lot more decisions better without even having to go to a physical showroom. So imagine that. And then this can be applied to any other products as well in the world, such as like what we showed the VR showroom for the Subaru. So there's cars, there's houses, and imagine there's a lot more products you can do that. And marketing has been the mainstay as well, utilizing XR on how they augment menus to do XR campaigns, or even like AR try-ons, like what Gucci has been doing. So you imagine that you can literally try out clothing apparels on your body. So that's well, since the pandemic, you cannot try out clothes. So imagine like you have like a virtual mirror, AR mirror, look at yourself, and then you can see the clothes directly on your body, mapped to your body size. That is interesting. It is already being done out there. So like imagine if you can do that in our own local stores, like in Ion or like Guardian and whatnot. So that will be interesting as well. So there's a whole lot of potential to be using XR within the advertising and marketing world just to get the brand across and whatnot. Okay, so we talked about the current world of XR. We talked about the industry. So what does the future holds for XR? Where does it go from here? It's already 2021. So how do you imagine what would happen in 2025 or whatnot? So based on a lot of researchers, XR businesses is expected to grow by more than 209 US billion dollars by 2022. This was a research by in 2019, which is basically anticipating by next year is going to be a 2,200 billion dollar business. Imagine that. So there is money in this. Basically, there's a lot of people are throwing money, throwing big money for XR solutions. So you want to be a part of this business rather than going through. Probably there will be some jobs that will be obsolete by then. Already nowadays, you can see there are few jobs are going obsolete as well. So we want to make sure that our graduates, when they graduate by then, they would have proper jobs and they are well equipped and they are well exposed to these new technologies to be a part of it, and then they're creating their own solutions and then their work. AR remote expertise and training applications. They have almost 60 million active users by 2025. So this is basically as well, when we talk about onboarding, we talk about virtual training and whatnot. And now because of the travel restrictions, you would have AR remote expertise training as well. So you don't really have to have the specialist to be with the trainee all the time, because specialists, the experts probably have like a lot of more important things to do. Probably they will have like more higher concerns on their job rather than training people. So you have the training to be done within a remote expertise or even like a virtual environment as well. So this was done research just last year. ABI research done this particular research, so it's just going to grow. So we know there is demand for AR remote expertise and training applications. And VR startups has the number of them has been increased within 14% in less than a year. This was a recent study by Tech Jury. So in this year, there's 14% of startups for revolving around VR. So what does that say? That this say basically there's a lot of people out there, they know that VR is the next, is the new, is the now thing, is the something that they need to be a part of. So they have created their own startups and created their own solutions product, becoming solutions provider by themselves, utilizing VR as their main source of business, because like we know this is basically the new thing. Everybody will basically making a lot more decisions with these kind of experiences. And because of the pandemic, COVID-19, social distancing and remote workforces will accelerate growth in immersive XR collaboration revenue to over 400 million US dollars by 2025 as well. So compared to that, before this, we talk about the overall business. This is specifically on remote workforces. Basically, you have like the virtual collaborations. You have like, this is basically like how Spatial has done it, how Outspace has done it. So there's a lot of people are, they know they want to work together and they want to make it better to be more productive, be more efficient. So you have, when you have a virtual environment, you can literally see your co-workers in there and you are working on a virtual work in front of you. So it just gives a whole different experience of working. It gives, adds in a bit more fun to it. Obviously it makes work fun. And then there are certain people, I think like last year when the pandemic came about, some people are organizing their meetings in online games such as Red Dead World, basically. So this is something, is a new thing, and it's not but really soon it's not going to be new anymore, but a lot of people are going to be over, this is going to be the new norm, that people are going to be relying on virtual collaboration, that you won't need, you would have to become, it becomes a necessity now that you are collaborating in the virtual environment, and it's not something like an add-on or like an enhanced version, but it's something that this is what you would require to work because of the current situations. You imagine, we have no idea how the world is going to evolve in the coming future. But so this is basically the whole idea of like why this is something is going to come really soon. And finally, I want to end with this. Basically, it's a quote by Hideo Kojima, the creator of Metal Gear Solid. He said that 90% of what is considered impossible is in fact possible. The other 10% will become possible with the passage of time and technology. So what does this say? This is basically saying that technically everything is possible. The future is bright. That's this unlimited potential to what XR can do. If there are things that you cannot do right now, there are probably ways of it to be able to become something possible. If not now, it will be coming soon within the next year or so, or probably with the coming of new technologies, new evolution, new research and whatnot. These things would come about, and then with these new research and tech, the things that was used to deemed impossible will become possible. So join us with this particular this particular journey to a better world, a better future within the XR realm, because we know that XR would become a lot more, and we're just gonna get better and better. And with devices become more affordable and experiences become more accessible, the future might not be that far ahead anymore. So you never know. So that's like the whole point. We want you guys coming over to APU or any other universities that has XR to know that basically this would be the one that would prepare you and when you are already graduating, because then by the time you graduate the next 5 6 years and whatnot, you would have the knowledge to be prepared to what the world would be in that particular time. You don't want to learn the things that it's already been done 5 10 years ago. Who wants to know about that? By the time you graduate, the next 5 years you're learning things which is 20 years ago. So that's no point. You would become obsolete by the time you graduate, and you don't want that. So this is basically the whole point of it. You want to make sure that you are in the right business, in the right field, and you would be basically be well prepared for the future. And I think that covers my session for today. Thank you. Basically, if you have like any other questions and want to learn more about what I have to say, basically you can just email me on faisalatar@ministryxl.com. You can find me on LinkedIn with the handle Faisalatar. You can add me also on Instagram, FaisalatarMXR. I have I have an article on LinkedIn as well about getting into the XR industry. If you are like really, that's not necessarily if you're a student or whatnot, but you are want to know more on how to get into the XR industry. So there is an article for that, and I shared with you my two fat cats images there. So thank you.
Thank you, Faisal. I think that is a very insightful sharing session. And from the sharing just now, you did give us a glance from end user perspective to business partners perspective, and also the existing applications and in the future 5 to 10 years or more. So now I would like to invite those who are with us. If you have any questions, please feel free to post your questions so that we may look into your questions and answer it accordingly. And while waiting for questions to come on board, perhaps I have one question for Faisal. So just now you did share with us about some of the real world applications in XR. Allow me to use this neural term XR for VR, AR, or MR. So particularly one of the area you talk about was was the business applications. And then you also did share with us about the virtual training provided, and then because of this pandemic and various physical interaction is no longer available. So businesses, I would say, evolve into a new direction, into this virtual environment or with this XR technology in place. So I have one question related to from the business perspective. As we see, yes, by using XR technology, we are able to engage our users or our clients more effectively, if I may say it. So embarking to this relatively new technology in business models seems to be involving quite a lot of money and investment. All right. And then I do not know if the investment, a lot of time when we talk about business, when we talk about investment, we also look into return of investment, the ROI. So by investing certain amount of money into this new technology in businesses, it may not, or it is not guaranteed. Let's put it this way: it is not guaranteed to have a, a profitable outcome. And therefore, why, in your opinion, then those business partners should still be considering this new technology in their respective businesses?
Okay, thank you for the question. It is something that we have at Ministry XR, we have already dealt with as well a lot of times with this, talking about budget and whatnot. Because like traditionally, when we talk about marketing and advertising, these companies would have allocated like a marketing budget for campaigns and whatnot. So it's not much, because like traditionally they would assume marketing budget would go into production, doing TV ads, YouTube ads, or social media postings, or posters, physical posters on the public places and whatnot. But to add in like AR, VR experiences as a campaign, that sometimes they are a bit skeptical, and they would ask obviously at the same time about ROI. But we propose to them that basically, because like the cost of building an XR applications, we are trying to make it more competitive with other developers as well. But at the same time, we want to make sure that it's not a one-off experience, and it's not a one-off contact, that it becomes a more long-term project. So especially when marketing companies, they involve on creating like an application per se. So if you have like an application, building the application itself is cost, obviously. But when you have that particular application, you have the framework, you have the base foundation of it, you have a platform already. So afterwards, when you want to add in content, you want to add in new promotions, you want to add in new products and whatnot, the cost won't be as high as before, because you already have the product there, you already have the platform. So it's just basically adding on to it. So it becomes a more long-term process. And in which case, in long term, when you consider the cost versus the budget that you were given, you would actually gain more in the long run, rather than what you are looking for in the short term. So this is basically the things that we try to educate a lot of these agencies as well. Basically, the more benefit of having long term promotion, and it can evolve into something better. Basically, you can go to collaborations with other partners, or collaborations with academics, like what we did with Maxis as well. Maxis did this particular. They had this campaign during Raya 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So they were targeting. They had like a very heartfelt advertisement about how the deaf could not experience the Takbir Raya. We know that in Islam, every time Raya, every time they Eid, there is this takbir, and then the Muslims will come together at the masjid for the Eid prayer, and then they would repeat the takbir over and over, and becomes a very heartfelt experience for us. But for the deaf and hearing impaired, they're not hearing anything, so they are not part of that experience. So what we propose with Maxis as well, we created like an app with have like visual semantics and vibrations that follows the takbir lyrics, basically the whole ayat of the takbir. When it's basically sound through the speakers, it would vibrate, and it would follow the visuals. So the deaf and hearing impaired, they look through this app, they can actually feel it at the same time, and so they will be feeling that they're a part of the experience. So that is really interesting experience as well. But the sad thing is, it was merely used as a campaign, and that's just it. Why we thought it was going to go even further, where you can really make an app for the deaf and hearing, and it's not just specifically for Muslims or for everybody. Why not? Everybody should be able to experience, because there's a lot of deaf and hearing impaired community in Malaysia by itself, that can really utilize something that really makes them be a part of other religious activities, or any concerts or whatnot. Because like right now, we only have like the speech to text, voice experience and whatnot, but what if they can feel more about it? So XR can help into that. So this is the things that we try to educate as well, and there are a few very growing numbers of companies that are starting to get and to understand the long-term benefits of XR into their campaigns. Even like if you see like out there, big companies like luxury brands like LV, Chanel, Gucci, they try out these, like they're not utilizing it merely as a campaign, but rather than advertising their products direct themselves, like the Gucci try on the feet, like even like Chanel, I mean LV, they have like an AR app to try out the handbags and whatnot. So it becomes something practical, so it becomes something more useful that we people are we using it more and more. Even like when you consider the cost of creating that particular app at the very beginning, it might be high, but in the long term, because you already have that platform, it's just a matter of adding more content, adding more platform, adding more products, adding more promos, adding more features to it, and becomes you establish yourself as a future forward thinking brand by itself. And that is something that's, you cannot put a price to that per se, because like a lot of times when us as consumers, we look at a lot of brands and we keep seeing this particular brand, these guys are incorporating XR into their work, these guys are incorporating XR into their ads, into their how we try out their products, and how they engage us as a consumer. So it becomes a whole different experience. As consumers, you would naturally become attracted to it, and it is very apparent to the newer generations as well. People who are like, they come out of the parents' stomach with the phone in their hands, they would basically become more susceptible with these kind of experiences, obviously. So this is basically the target user that we are trying to go for. So it is something, it's matter of like taking a leap of faith, but nowadays there are numbers to back them up, because there are companies who are already investing big monies, and it is just basically on us getting into the same boat as well.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Faisal and Mr. Jacob, for a fantastic session. We have some questions from the audience. So may I ask whether VR/AR graduates has a high demand in Malaysia?
Actually, yes. We are considering like the limitations of them, because there's not many universities that's offering XR related courses. There are certain universities, obviously APU, they are basically doing VR AR specialization. Before this, there's a few other universities that are selling VR merely as a subject and whatnot, something as an elective. So it does help, but for the companies such as us and other XR related companies in Malaysia, we are really in demand for people who have the exposure and the understanding of XR, of VR AR. Because like if we take somebody from, let's say if we have like doing like a game or whatnot to do 3D assets, but we want to do VR based game, to take a typical 3D artist who has no exposure towards XR technology, they may be really well skilled in the creation of assets, but they're not, and they do not understand how to develop for such a platform. Because sometimes especially like talking about like the technical terms like low poly modeling, types of shaders and whatnot, because they are basically more prone to doing pre-rendered shots rather than real-time experiences. So there are ways of development that they have to understand, and we will have to spend some time on educating them. Whereas if we get somebody from a VR AR background in their degree, we look basically in their background, we look at their resume, they've learned they have learned about VR, they have involved themselves in some XR projects and whatnot. So when we talk to them, the language is not that much difference, because they kind of understand how to develop, talking about creative these designers and whatnot. They understand the nature of having UI design within an augmented space. They understand how to create 3D assets for a real-time 3D VR applications. They understand as well how to create 3D within an AR or a mixed reality WebGL experience, because they have kind of like exposure to it. So it's not really that hard to go into that transition. So this is why it is still in demand, because the numbers is not that is still kind of limited. So yes, if to answer that particular question, VRAR graduate, it is in demand. It's just basically the companies of that's offering these kind of like positions, they themselves are limited in Malaysia. But even though it is a growing number, there's a lot of other startups as well that's basically growing, and they will be needing these students to be able to understand how to create assets to do it. So it depends. It doesn't matter what kind of field they are in, because like we mentioned before, there's solutions for all of the fields. The VR developers or XR developers themselves, they are creating the content for the industry fields that is basically in demand for it. So it helps basically if you have some passion or subject matter expert to that particular subject, but it helps as well to understand about the technology behind it and then how to develop within that particular realm. So yeah.
All right, thank you. So we have another last question, also from Tiffany, asking about any example of companies that VR AR students can do their internship or where do they work after they graduating?
There are a few. Like we at Ministry XR, we are accepting internships and basically graduates from APU. We have been accepting internships and graduates from APU as well. There are certain companies out there like such as Mosho Fixo, and like I can't remember the other company's name right now, but there are a few companies that allows to do internship, and they accept work, just like we mentioned before, because it is such in demand. So if there is any students who have VRAR in their background, they're wholly free to come by and do their internship with us, and it's basically pursuing their career with us.
Okay, so that's the last question of the day. Thank you, Mr. Faisal.
Okay, hopefully that helps a lot.
Yep. So time is almost over now, and I think our session for today is going to end here. So we're going to have the next session with the topic of the future outlook of actuaries at 2:30 p.m. later. So stay tuned and follow our Facebook page for more updates. Once again, come to join our APUE Open Day. And thank you very, very much, Mr. Jacob and also Mr. Faisal. And thank you everyone who joined with us for this live session. So take care and goodbye.
See you guys.
I